morning, and welcome. It's amazing to see so many people here at the summit. It really makes me happy to kind of see everyone gathered together, and I'm really looking forward to this week to collaborate with everyone here. So first of all, I want to thank the sponsors. Google, Nuage, Ansible, and Red Hat for helping us organize all this. Really big thanks to everyone. So a little history. A little over 10 years ago, Joe Fitzgerald and I founded ManageIQ. And it was an interesting start to something that's grown into this. It's really kind of phenomenal. In December of 2012, Red Hat acquired ManageIQ, and in a few months later, in April, we released CloudForms 2.0 based on the ManageIQ code base. In June of 2014, almost 2 years ago, Red Hat open sourced ManageIQ, and in October, we had our first ManageIQ summit here, and this is our second one this time around. All the key engineers from the startup are still here and part of the team. There are multiple teams inside Red Hat working on ManageIQ, and they're well represented here in this audience. There's also multiple teams outside of ManageIQ. There's Google, there's Nuage, there's Protobahn. There's quite a number of people outside, and I'm kind of hoping that outside team will grow as well. And I just want to say happy 10th year anniversary to ManageIQ. So when we started, as a startup develops, it has a marketing message, a focus, and what I've kind of noticed is that the message has actually evolved over time. So when we first came out, the message was, and actually the name of the product was Enterprise Virtualization Management. And it was really focused on that, on virtualized environments in the enterprise and managing them. Then as clouds started coming about, the message started shifting to hybrid cloud management. And we're doing virtualization and cloud. Then it morphed into just a cloud management platform. Then, when we open sourced, it kind of became the open source cloud management platform. And where I would like to see it go next is just removing the cloud from it and just becoming the open source management platform to manage all the things out there. So I'm going to talk about a few things that are on my mind that I'm kind of hoping will evolve over the next, year or two, that they will actually hit the product. So the first one is we're gonna separate the repos. Or right now, pretty much the majority of the code, 95% of the code, is sitting in one repo, the ManageIQ repo in GitHub. I want to start breaking that out into multiple repos. So why would I want to do that? I think it's going to force componentization. I think it would be easier to kind of focus people on a certain area and have them kind of become experts in that area. Also, the tests that are kind of running right now, they're all jumbled together. And the test suites would be good if they were kind of broken out a little bit. And also, finally, from a user perspective, it would allow, if we do this, it would allow for different build combinations, so that somebody can go off and, if they want to, build ManageIQ simply for the cloud, the public cloud, or if they want to, they can simply build it for virtualization or for something else. And so that's what it would allow. What are kind of the candidates for separate repos? User interfaces is a good candidate. So we have one user interface already there, the self-service UI. the main UI is still sitting in that big ManageIQ repo. So we're going to take it out of there and put it into its own kind of world. All the provider integrations that we have, they're all sitting inside of the ManageIQ repo. We're going to move them around as well. And there's also logical components like the Automate engine that would probably make a lot of sense to just split off into their own repo. So that's kind of the repo story. So we're definitely going to split things out. It's going to allow us to componentize and really focus on different areas better. We have, so as I said, we started off with virtual, then went into cloud, and then started expanding. So as of today, we have support for all of these different provider types in the product. There's cloud, there's virtual infrastructure, there's containers, configuration managers, network, storage, which is kind of hidden, and applications, middleware that's actually in development right now. The other ones are all kind of, these are all working today, and you guys are all using them, hopefully. So all these are working. And there's more in progress. There's more being built. The Hawkular one, the Nuage one, there's a NetApp one, there's an Oracle Virtualization Manager, the IBM Software, and I think more will follow. So expect more providers into the future. So that kind of raises the point of how do we make it easier to add these providers? And I think there's going to be a talk about that later, today or tomorrow. So the point of this is to simplify the engineering of a new provider and to standardize the engineering of a new provider. Right now, if you're doing it, if you're kind of trying to add a provider, you kind of have to go all over the code to figure things out. The idea is to evolve it over time so that you're not going all over the code to figure things out. The SQL schema is going to remain, in the platform, in ManageIQ. I don't see that moving ever. But each provider would be in a separate repo under the ManageIQ organization. So the interfaces that would have to be standardized are the 6 kind of disciplines that we have for providers. The inventory, the events, the metric, the operations. The operations with Automate, like provisioning, retirement, maybe something else, as well as Smart State. I think there's something wrong there. Oh, no. So on the provider pluggability, the UI today and the REST API, they kind of have too much knowledge of each provider. So the goal is that if you plug in a new provider, the UI just works. It doesn't, there's nothing for it to kind of, there's nothing for you as an engineer to kind of figure out. It should ask and not kind of, it should ask the provider, do you know how to do this? Can you do that? It's a much simpler kind of model. So that's where we're going to evolve to. So that's kind of the overview on the pluggable providers. There's going to be a session later by Greg Blomquist, I think. So user interfaces. It's plural, it's more than one. So right now we have the self-service and we have what I'm calling the classic UI, the one that's always been there. I see in the future more UIs kind of sprouting up, whereas people try new things or maybe partition the product in different ways. And it's going to work over the REST API. So that means that if you see something in ManageIQ in the UI that you can see and do, you will know that it will be possible to do in the REST API as well, simply because it's working that way. And this will also kind of, doing that will push the REST API development to kind of keep up with the UI so that it can encompass all the features that we have in the UI there. A big trend these days is in UIs is single page applications. And that's really kind of one HTML page that loads up a bunch of JavaScript, and then everything runs in the browser instead of on the server, and it's going back and forth and getting information using JavaScript and using the REST API. So it kind of fits on a single web page. It usually provides a much more fluid user experience, like all the modern UIs that you see out there. They're all kind of done in this style. The self-service UI already does that. And I'm kind of hoping that the future ManageIQ UIs also use this technique. Again, the whole separate repos theme, move the classic UI into its own repo. The self-service UI is already in its own repo, and each additional UI that we add should become its own repo as well. Future UIs, at least what's in my head. There's already work afoot to add a service designer component, kind of the admin flip side to the self-service UI. So the self-service UI allows you to consume service catalog items and create new services. The service designer will kind of enable an admin to create catalog items, service catalog items. So that's kind of what's happening there. Eventually, we'll replace the services tab in the classic UI. I've been thinking and speaking to John Hardy about having a new admin UI, like just a brand new one for settings, for the workers, the zones, all the kind of stuff that kind of admins really do on an ad hoc basis. It would really be cool if we can just move all of that over into a new place. And I saw, the last one I saw in one of the Ansible products, I think an Ansible Tower, they have a UI that's really geared for developers, I think, but really for testers or anyone, where they just kind of encapsulate the REST API and the responses that they get and just put them on a screen. I think it would be really cool if we can add one of those to ManageIQ to allow, instead of writing command lines all the time to test out the REST API, you just go into the UI and you do that. So next topic is automate. So let's see. So automate was created years ago, and Peter McGowan is going to give a talk about it later, as well as Greg McCullough and Madhu. I think there's multiple talks. So the three kind of big themes that we've been discussing, that I'm kind of hoping will materialize over the next, in the future here, are the automate methods that are called today. They're working over the distributed Ruby protocol, which is an interesting protocol, but it's not very standard. And it's kind of very Ruby-esque only. You can't really have other languages or something like that for Ruby for automate methods. We're going to switch them to use the REST API instead. So they're going to stop going over DRB eventually, and they're going to go over the REST API. The other one that we've been bouncing back and forth is having methods run as Docker containers. Why would we do that? It makes them more, more secure. We can restrict whether a method can or cannot see the file system, for example. Today it can, and it's really not a great thing. You can do the same thing with ports and network access and other stuff. It would also allow gems, Ruby gems that are in the product that automate methods often share, and they often get out of whack of what an automate method needs versus what a product needs. If you put them in containers, then they would just live in two separate worlds and they would never worry about each other. And also we could have multiple containers for different purposes. Maybe one is kind of for one type of method, another one is for another type of method, maybe one's for Ruby, another one's for Python. Like automate was never designed to be fully Ruby only for the end user. It was designed to be any language you want. So that's kind of my thoughts on automate methods via Docker containers. Hopefully we can make that a reality. The last one, and I think Madhu talked about it a while ago, so this has been going on for a while, is the automate data store as a Git repository. So the idea there is that right now all the automate data store stuff, the classes, the domains, instances, methods, all that's stored in the file system. It used to be in SQL, and now it's kind of SQL and some file system stuff together. I kind of wanted to go away into just a pure Git repository that all the automate appliances can just share. That would allow a few things. So for example, today when you run some automate thing, and an admin comes in and updates a method or an instance in the process, you're going to get, you might get like a race condition, a traffic jam, that you're running something and somebody else is updating something that you're trying to run right now. If we go with Git, you can just check out a particular SHA or a tag, run automate on that SHA, and then you'll just know that you got a box set that worked. You could also like try things in, for test versus production. So you can tag your Git repo, this is the stuff that I want for production, but these other guys I want for test. I want to try out some new things. And it would also allow future integrations into IDEs, because IDEs kind of work with Git repos anyway. So that's pretty straightforward win there. Next topic is Postgres. So for years, we've kind of been using Postgres as the data store, and have asked customers to kind of figure out for themselves how to make it fail over, how to provide HA and all that, and some customers have gone out and done that. But I really want to kind of bake that into the functionality in ManageIQ. So I'd like to create a clustered Postgres where maybe 3 appliances, for example, are all part of a Postgres cluster, and they're all doing their Postgres thing. So it would allow for failover and HA, but also would allow for basically database administration from within the application. So if we kind of go with, a crawl, walk, run, or what we call inside control and automate, on the inside stage, you would actually be able to see what's going on in your database today. And I think some of that is already visible on the database tab in the settings, or I don't know where it is down, but yeah. But I think that's kind of where it ends right now, and it's not really used too much. But I think going forward, we want to kind of have the system look at all that and say, it's time for a re-indexing, or it's time for a Postgres vacuum, or it's time for something else. Push the button and it'll happen. Whereas today, somebody goes in and they're perplexed as to how to make that happen. And then finally, kind of we do best and automate all that, so that you just set up a schedule or something, and your database is vacuumed, indexed on a regular basis, and you don't even know, because a lot of the many of the support calls that we get, especially for metrics or something else with a lot of data usage, is really all about, well, the database hasn't been maintained in months, and all of a sudden, like, everything is crashing. So it would be really good if the product can be smart enough to auto-inspect itself and auto-correct itself. So as I just mentioned, metrics. So right now they're in Postgres, and with basically millions of rows being written and read, it's painful. And it's going to get more painful as we manage more things. So there's investigation going on into time series databases to kind of move the data out of Postgres and into the TSDB. And also on top of that, the TSDB kind of provides more functionality than just vanilla Postgres for doing what we do. So a lot of the calculations that we do inside ManageIQ today would be done in the TSDB. So our approach is similar to what we've seen Rails do with Active Record. Active Record is something that Rails has to support multiple backends. So we want to create a new abstraction layer called Active Metric that's going to go against multiple backends, and we'll pick one, and we'll kind of start with one, and it will evolve. So those are the ones that we're kind of thinking of right now, is to try to support the current one in Postgres with this abstraction layer, and some of the ones that are kind of popular, the Hawkular metrics, the Influx, Prometheus, and then we can sort out how to make that happen. So as I mentioned, we're going to pick a default backend, but it's going to evolve over time, right? the technology front runner. I mean, technology changes all the time. So what's the best this year may not be the best a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now. So you don't want to be locked into any particular one. Some project may change its licensing, and all of a sudden it's fine technically, but we can't use it anymore. And we've kind of seen that Influx just went through that last one where they were open source and now they're open core. And maybe someday they'll be closed core. I mean, who knows, closed source. I mean, who knows where they're going to go. So I think creating this abstraction layer will kind of help us in not locking ourselves into anything. Basically, we already did this with the database using Active Record. So this approach has been proven out. So in the past, ManageIQ has worked on MySQL, and we used that for a while, and then we threw it away. Well, we stopped using it because it turns out that they can't index dates and times too well, and our metrics just couldn't work on MySQL. Postgres is something that we've used, for a long time, and we worked on for years on Microsoft SQL Server as well. So this approach has kind of worked out before. Just like before, originally we thought it was going to be MySQL because it was popular in 2007, and then it stopped being popular, right? And then Postgres became popular. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking with metrics. Next one is our MIQQ, which is our messaging and job dispatching system, and the guts of things. It's not really very standard. It was homegrown to kind of fit the needs that we had and have. And it's problematic because of that, because it was homegrown, it's not standard. So we have both routing and job dispatching all rolled into one. And it's complex, and we can't move away from it too easily until we kind of rework it to simplify it. So I'm thinking that maybe we do the same thing, create an active message abstraction layer to kind of deal with the messaging systems out there. And Rails already has an active job layer that we can use that for as well. So that's kind of how I'm hoping that we will progress. So this is just really raw thoughts. I mean, we've talked a little bit about that, but it's not really far enough along yet where I can give you any details yet. What else? We're containerizing ManageIQ. So right now we're focused on having a monolithic container, and it's pretty close to complete. So that was kind of step one. Step two is going to be kind of a multiple container version, which is kind of the norm in the container world. It would allow for a better deployment architecture, better security, better upgrade experience. It would kind of allow all the things that containers were created for. It will also force separation of things with state, with data, versus things without state, so just kind of raw code versus data. A lot of that is intermixed right now. All right, this is one that's kind of been in my mind for a long time, and I'm kind of hoping that somebody could start this. And that is that it would be really cool if ManageIQ could just manage its own deployment, right? So right now, you get an appliance, and then you got to figure out how many appliances, how do they all kind of tie together, where the workers should be placed, the zones, all this kind of stuff. People who sell the product, that's a lot of their work is going out there and figuring all this stuff out. And it's great that they figure it out, like on day one, that's awesome. But like in a month, and 2 months, and 3 months, it all changes because the environment's changing, their workflow changes, and you got to come back and redo it. So I think the same kind of crawl, walk, run approach, we got to get insight. So we got to be able to kind of, ManageIQ has to be able to show what's happening in its deployment architecture, how many zones, which appliances are in which zone, which workers are working on what. Maybe in the insight phase, start recommending potential improvements to the deployment architecture based on performance data or some other data that we can see. It would really be cool if we can do that. And then the next one is control, to kind of take those recommendations, put them up on a screen for you, and have you press the easy button, and it just happens. So that would be really nice. And finally, automate. Same kind of thing as I mentioned before with the database, but now applied to the whole ManageIQ deployment architecture. The same thing would happen there, that it would just automatically figure it out, and if you allow it to, it would try to stand up workers where they need to be, or take down workers where they need to be, or even spin up new appliances in zones where they need to be. So that's kind of where I see the future of the self-managing deployment architecture. Finally, the ManageIQ platform itself. We keep talking about platform, but it's not really a platform yet. I wish it were, but it's not. I think it's going to take a lot of time. But that's really kind of about modularization and componentization. And kind of the thing that's in my mind is that Rails, the very popular Rails framework, was basically extracted out of a product that also still exists today called Basecamp. I'm kind of hoping that we can do the same thing here, is that we can extract over time the ManageIQ platform out of what's today ManageIQ. So that's kind of the end of my talk here. Again, really want to focus on making this the open source management platform. A reminder, please vote on the name of the e-release. I will be announcing those results tomorrow. I think when I looked over the weekend, there were like 43 votes or something, and I see a lot more people here. So if you guys want to vote, vote, because tomorrow morning I will announce. So manage all the things. And one more thing. I'll be giving a chess simul today, if anybody's interested, since I'm Chess Bite. Anyone can try their luck. I brought in 10 chess sets, and if anybody can pull.
Thanks, Oleg. Do we have any questions, or we actually have like a few minutes for Q&A, but.
Could you just comment on, in terms of the vision behind the product for the next 2 years? What are some of the key capabilities that will emerge out of that vision? What can we expect at a very high level, strategically speaking? And then 2 follow-up questions. One, could you talk about how the product will mature in terms of its native integration with AWS for AWS's infrastructure services? And lastly, could you comment on the distinction of where this would fit in with container management with reference to, say, other projects like Kubernetes?
So on the vision, the product is going to, evolve along the axes that I kind of just mentioned in my talk. We will have more provider types. So we'll have more providers, first of all. So that'll give us more breadth. We will have more provider types, which is going to expand it more. I think really the key thing that I'm looking for in ManageIQ, kind of the story that I like to tell, is that if we can do application management, let's say, so an application is running on some container management system like Kubernetes or OpenShift. So it would be cool if you can drill in from an application to the container management system, to the infrastructure in which that container management system is running, all the way to the hardware. And if there's any issues across that whole traversal, that we would be able to show them to you and allow you to react to them, and in the future even automate the things that are kind of common issues. So that's kind of where I'm looking at the next kind of round for ManageIQ to go. Your second question was about AWS. So we have some support there, and just as with any provider, it all depends on kind of the teams that are involved and who wants to do what. So we welcome Amazon to kind of join the fray and add some developers and expand the platform there. And the last one was about Kubernetes. Yeah, on ManageIQ, we welcome any and all providers. So we already have container management on OpenShift. And if there's kind of somebody wants to do container management on Kubernetes itself, more power to them. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you.